Welcome to Frantoio Grove. We're on a mission to regenerate soil health and create healthy ecosystems on our farm.
So last year we picked about 100 tons of fruit from our 30-acre orchard, which is about 20 tons more than we've ever picked before. And I think we had about 20 or 30 tons left in the orchard when the rains finally came and got our fields wet enough that we couldn't get back out there. So we knew that we were going to come into this year and have a light year. We saw the bloom. It was a pretty light bloom. We kept our fingers crossed, and when fruit set came around, we realized that we weren't going to have enough fruit to pick. So we had to stop and step back and think about where we were and where we were going and how we got here. In the last 6 years, we've had 3 years with not enough fruit to have a crop. And in the farm, if you have a bad year, you have a bad year. And you brush off the dust, lick your wounds, and you move on. But when you have 3 bad years in 6 years, it's not the weather, it's not the pruning, it's not the fertilizer. Something's going on, something's changing. And we're looking around, and this is happening to everybody. This year we had a warm period in February, and then it went back right into a frost in March. And across the state, olive harvests are down. At this point, we have to realize that the climate is changing, and the trees are getting confused, and we need to change how we approach our farm in order to create more resilient systems. So we normally expect to have a big crop and then a small crop. Ideally, what we would do is we would prune hard following a small crop when the trees have had some time to rest and recover, and prune light following a big crop. And that's a big part of what's going on here is we got kind of flipped around, and we've been on a cycle where we pruned hard after a huge crop, and then we pruned super light after a small crop. Following last year's harvest, we had a huge harvest, and we did very little prune. We should expect at least a decent crop this year because if it was a pruning issue, we've finally gotten back on track. And this year, when the fruit set came in, we realized that it wasn't just the pruning issue. So when the weather starts doing weird things, the weather starts doing acrobatics and giving you these cold snaps in the middle of the growing season and warming up in the middle of the dormant season, it's not an issue you can fix with some more water or some more fertilizer, potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus. You can dump all that in the field you want. It's not going to fix the issue. What's going on here is the trees are just having abiotic stress. And what we need to do is to solve that problem. That's a problem we have to solve by creating more of an ecosystem in the field. So as we learn about more regenerative agricultural systems, we're finding that the systems that have really well-developed soil microbiomes and even on the leaves and the bark of the trees, and there's even a class of bacteria that will enter into the cells and live inside the cells of the tree, and other plants growing in the orchard, and insects. Really beneficial insects can help protect your plants as well. When you create these systems, they help create resilience in the trees and the crop. And so when we talk about things like abiotic stress, the way we can address that is, again, not through water or fertilizer or other conventional management tools. It's by creating these systems, we're able to create trees that can heal themselves and can withstand these stresses. So what happens in these systems is that you have the soil hosts all these microorganisms, the bacteria and the fungi. What they do is they live off of the root exudates. So when the tree grows, it photosynthesizes, it creates carbohydrates from water and carbon dioxide in the air, and it processes those, and some of that, the excess, it kicks out into the roots, and that feeds the microbiome. And so you have all these beneficial microorganisms that live off of the sugars from the trees and the other plants. And what they do is they live off these sugars, and then they also do other beneficial things. They solubilize minerals in the soil, and they also create all these beneficial compounds. So if we think about olive oil is really great for us. It's really great for our heart health. It's great for your skin. It's great for your blood pressure. It's great for your brain health. It's a long conversation that we can have about how good olive oil is for you, and it's because of the polyphenols in the olive oil. Well, if we think about the microbiome and in the root zone of these plants, and what they're doing is they're not providing the nutrition to the plants in the form of, when we go out there with fertilizer, it's like Skittles and pasta, white pasta to these trees. To the plant, it's like olive oil. It's like a whole wheat pasta. It's like a red ripe tomato straight off the vine. These things are full of nourishment and vitamins and minerals and polyphenols and all these other wonderful compounds that are good for you and help you digest everything. And so when the plant gets their nutrition from these bacteria and fungi, what they're getting is they're getting a really well-balanced diet with all these beneficial compounds that help them grow and succeed. And so the way we get there, the way we get to create this ecosystem, is we have to stop thinking about the farm like a factory where we have inputs in of, fertilizer and water and sunshine, and then we get outputs out. It's not 1 + 1 + 1 = 3 anymore. It's not that simple. But the benefit is, on the flip side, if we do it right, 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, it can equal 10. And the way we do this is we start thinking about the farm as an ecosystem. And so everything we do, we have to think not how does this affect our yield, we have to think how does this affect our ecosystem? Is this going to create more resilience in the ecosystem? Is this going to increase the biological diversity in the soil? Is this going to create more beneficial insects in the field that will help us manage pests? So we have a lot of different things that we have planned to help kind of restore the ecosystem and restore the soil health. And we'll be doing those, especially as we get into the spring and summer during the growing season. There's a lot more we can do. But now what we're doing is we're pruning, and we have to think about what is pruning in relationship to an ecosystem. So as we learn about these regenerative cropping systems, what we're finding is that there's a huge benefit to the reintegration of animals into traditional cropping systems. And the benefit, obviously, you get manure, which is great. It's full of nutrition. It's full of biology. But there's another factor. It's when an animal grazes in a piece of land, what happens is that the plants that are eaten are then switched into a growth mode, and they regrow. And it's that period of regrowth that is the most beneficial to the soil, because what it does is it's maximizing photosynthesis and putting so much root exudates into the soil. It's just feeding so much sugars into the ground, and that feeds the bacteria and the fungi, and it's like a stimulus package for the soil, and it's tremendous. And so for us, we can't have sheep in here right now because we're in the middle of picking and growing, and the fields are muddy, so we can't have sheep. But we can come in and we can do a prune job. And the pruning, what's going to happen is as the weather warms up in the spring, we're going to get a lot of regrowth, and all that regrowth is going to feed the soil biology, and it's going to help us get where we need to go. So now our approach to pruning is not just to keep the trees at a manageable height and to thin out the foliage some to make it easy to harvest the trees, but it's to think about the trees in an ecosystem and to mimic the natural patterns of grazing. And if we step into the trees and do a little bit more of a severe prune, what we're able to do is we're going to be able to push the tree into a state of constant regrowth. And it's going to be constantly trying to grow as many leaves as possible, to capture as much sunlight as possible, maximizing photosynthesis. And in return, that tree is going to kick out a bunch of sugar into the ground, and it's going to feed the microbiome, and the microbiome is going to turn around and feed the tree back with solubilized nutrients and other beneficial compounds. So we've had a really fun time taking a deep dive this year into regenerative agriculture and all the different things that we can do on farm to create more resilient systems, from the different kinds of compost we can create on farm and are starting to do that, and multi-species cover cropping, but even something as simple as pruning. As we take it apart and learn about it, we're finding that even these simple things can have really drastic and cascading effects down the line. We're really excited to jump into it, and we expect that we'll be sharing our progress as we go. And feel free to ask any questions you have about the process. We're really happy to talk about it. It's fun. It's our life now. And follow along for more updates.